All right, we are live here with another episode of the Rob Anderson Show. I believe this is episode 14. I'm losing track now, but real big honor for me to welcome my guest today, Alexander Soltys Jones, who is an author, musician, spiritual director, meditation instructor, and as I've gotten to know over the past year, all around awesome human being. Alexander, thank you for joining me.
Oh, well, thank you, Rob, for having me on the show. I appreciate it, and having the dialogue together.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And as I mentioned, first off, I have to tell the story. Very big synchronicity or serendipity, divine timing, or just no such thing as coincidence. And the story, it was actually July, just a couple of days ago, almost a year ago, July 15th of last year, that we met at Carl's house. And I think he was playing one of your songs on his radio show. Is that correct?
That's correct. He's playing Kelly's Dream, the recording. Yes.
Yeah. So everybody out there who's watching, this is just an amazing synchronicity, and like just for myself personally. So as Alexander and Carl are talking about Kelly's Dream, I'm thinking to myself, when I was growing up, we used to listen to this tape called Kaylee's Dream, but I guess, so I'm like, Kaylee's Dream. And as we're talking, something clicks in my mind, and I send my mom a message being, Mom, remember that tape you used to play for us, Kaylee's Dream? Do you still have the cassette? And she said, yes. And I said, who is the musician, or who is it? And she took a picture of it, sent it to me, and said, Alex Jones. And I said, is this you? And you said yes. So we didn't know that we called it Kaylee's Dream, but it's pronounced Callie's Dream. That's right.
Right. After the divine mother aspect in Hindu philosophy. So it's her beneficial dream. Right.
Yeah. And so the story is that I guess my mom found this. I forget where she said she found it. Perhaps it might have been, I forget where she said she picked it up, but this was a cassette tape from about 30 years ago, I guess it was, that my brother and I listened to, and we found it very calming. And after my parents split up when we were quite young, I think when they finally got divorced, I was about 8 or something. And so it would set the mood in the house. And my brother especially really loved it. He would always be, Mom, you got to put on Kaylee's Dream before we go to bed. So it was just so amazing that this part of our childhood came back around full circle, and I got to meet, the mind behind Kaylee's Dream. So I thought that was a wonderful story.
Yeah, it is a wonderful story. When you shared it, I was just so pleased that you recognized the recording, and it came back to you that it was Kaylee's Dream that we were playing.
Yeah, and it was just, I was kind of in awe that night on the way home. It was just such a surreal day because, that was actually, I think that might have been one of the first times that we got together after lockdown, going out to Carl's. And it was just really nice to be doing that and getting back out and doing things, because we were out of lockdown, I believe. And then to have this like part of my childhood in such a serendipitous event, and come back full circle and be like, wow, I got to meet Alex Jones, the guy who made Kaylee's Dream. So wonderful. And Alex, I wanted to ask you a little bit about who you are as a person and your journey, both, spiritually, but as well as, your background, where you were born and raised, and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, that's a huge journey.
Well, we are going to do it in 3 pieces. So let's start at the beginning, right?
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Okay, I was born in Toronto, Toronto General Hospital. So I'm Canadian born. And so, I just lived a regular life. I went to Toronto in high school and junior high and all that. It was when I was, I left school and was working, and decided to go back to school as a mature student. Because what I really wanted to do, Rob, I was really into weightlifting at the time. I was doing stuff, a pioneer of so many things, when they weren't even fashionable. I was doing weightlifting back in my teens, I was jogging the streets when nobody was jogging. I was doing yoga when nobody was doing yoga. But back then I was doing weightlifting, and I really wanted to become a physical education instructor. So I went back to University of Windsor. And when I was there, I was taking phys ed classes and stuff like that. But then I got to philosophy class, because I was really loving the idea of the Spartan idea of a perfect body, perfect mind. Didn't realize that there was a soul or, something beyond that. And when I got to philosophy class and read Plato's Allegory of the Caves, I mean, that just changed my life completely. So I thought at that point, there's no way I'm staying in university. It's not going to give me what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted, but there was an emptiness there. There was a seeking, and I didn't know what I was seeking. So I left university, even though I got a scholarship marks that first year at university and was accepted at University of Toronto. I just left and went out to Vancouver. And a friend of mine, he just said he was in Vancouver and he was at Toronto at the time. He said, come back with him and we would do independent study. And we did. I mean, I was studying all kinds of, and back in the 60s, back in 68, 69, when I was there, so much was happening in spirituality and everything, the whole hippie movement. I mean, it was a great time. And I was studying so many different things, like with him, astrology, he had a teacher, a guru, and it was part of the Sikh path. If you've seen the Sikhs with the turbans, I forget, I think it's Guru Nanak was their original founder, but he was a teacher from that. And he tried to get me initiated under him, but it didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right. And so we were doing all kinds of study. And I wanted to study too. I was really fascinated with Frederick Perls. He was the one who started Gestalt psychology. And he had left Epsilon and he was in Vancouver Island because he didn't like the way his teachings were going, because he was teaching back then. I mean, he was pretty unique, teaching mindfulness and getting in touch with the self, but it got into sensuality. And, he sort of left that scene because it was going in the direction he didn't want. I wanted to study with him, but it didn't happen. But the most singular point for me, Rob, was I was in Vancouver. By this time, I was lost because I wasn't weightlifting anymore. I changed my diet drastically because John and Yoko were into macrobiotics. And so I thought I'd try that because I was really—
What is that anyway? Sorry, I've never heard of it before.
It's sort of balancing the yin and the yang. It's coming to that neutral point. It's mainly grains and vegetables. It's just trying to get to that balance point between the yin and the yang.
Okay.
Of ourselves, So it's balancing the body to that point. I found later a vegetarian diet was much better for me in introducing fruits and nuts and things like that. But still, it was a vegetarian diet. So I just changed my diet drastically, and I don't recommend that to anybody because I did it too extreme, and I had very little energy because the body had a hard time adjusting.
Did you go from like a high protein diet because of weightlifting to that? Do you mean so you lost a lot of mass as well, or?
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I'm back at the time as Mr. Canada kind of material, but you wouldn't think that seeing me now. I mean, because I've lost all that muscle mass because I've done a lot of fasting and a whole different diet routine. And I do Yogananda's recharging exercises, which is very fascinating because he said, when you're doing weightlifting, you're focusing on the muscle, lifting the weight, focusing on the muscle. You're not thinking the energy at all, So what he does is he has exercises where you visualize the energy, the cosmic energy, which sustains us coming through the medulla, and then going to the body part, and by tensing and relaxing the body. And he's got this exercise routine, about 38 exercises. They're phenomenal. They're just as good as a chiropractic adjustment. They're a sort of a yoga pranayama technique. It's really wonderful. So that's what I do now. But yeah, at the time, I just lost all that muscle mass. And I must say, when I got off of meat, because I was on a heavy meat diet because of the protein, the first thing I noticed was my mind was a lot calmer instantly, just getting off of that toxic, sort of that energy. And as we know, when animals are slaughtered and, they're taken and prepared, I mean, just a lot of fear goes through them and all this adrenaline is pumping into them. And we're eating that stuff, we're eating that energy. And also it just keeps us rooted down in our base chakra. It's very hard to expand up into the spiritual eye, the crown chakra so the first thing I noticed was my mind was a lot calmer.
Mhm.
But the singular point that was the transition for me in my spirituality, other than the inner experience, but the transition point of where I knew I was going was I was at a Hare Krishna meeting. And I thought I was trying everything. So I went to the Hare Krishna meeting. And by this time, my mind was just all over the place. I didn't know what I was doing. I was seeking all these things, trying all these things. I didn't know where I was coming or going. I think I was going more than coming. And so I went to the Hare Krishna meeting, and they were doing their devotional bhakti. They were, jumping up and down, trying to raise the kundalini, and it was very devotional. But my mind was just saying, let's get to the feast. I don't want to do this devotion stuff. And I got really mad at myself for thinking such thoughts. And I went to sit down, and there was a spot in the benches in the back, and there was only one spot left. And I sat down, and this elderly lady, she was quite elderly. She was beside me, the oldest lady in the group. And I sat down beside her, and she was just staring at me, just literally staring at me. And finally I turned around, and you know what she said?
What?
This is not your way. You need to meditate in inner stillness. That's your way. Whoa, did I ever feel a tremendous energy from this woman?
No doubt.
She just read my soul. It was just amazing. So I asked why she was there. And she said she was there because her teacher, Sri Chinmoy, wanted to start a spiritual group there in Vancouver. So she was going around to different groups to see how they were presenting themselves so they could start one. So she was just checking out other groups. So I offered to drive her back to where she was staying. I had a 2-cylinder Citroen at the time. So I drove her to her place, and she mothered me because she could see that I was very sincere, but that was off the mark. And I was, because I'd done this drastic shift. And she really mothered me, and she invited me to come and meditate with her and just be with her. So I did. And after a couple of times, I just came to her one time. I said, Allah Devi, I just got to get my life together. I got to get to an ashram. I just got to get to some place where I can get it together, because I feel like I'm losing it here. And she gave me 3 choices. She really wanted me to wait till her teacher came, Sri Chinmoy. And if people don't know who Sri Chinmoy is, he was in New York. He had this, and if you're in Toronto, a famous restaurant, Annapurna restaurant at DuPont in Bathurst. It's a vegetarian restaurant. That's his group.
Okay.
And anyhow, she wanted me to wait, but he wasn't coming to 3 months. And I said, Allah, I just can't wait 3 months. And then she gave me another choice. She said, well, I know a beautiful soul in the Rocky Mountains. She has an ashram there, Swami Radha. And I will send a letter on your behalf, for you. And didn't feel right. And she said, well, there's a beautiful organization in California called Self-Realization Fellowship, founded by Paramahansa Yogananda. And that her teacher, Sri Chinmoy, had said that Yogananda was truly a man of God. He was God realized, and that many came after him to exploit yoga for money-making reasons and just didn't have the purity he did. As soon as I said that, Rob, it was like I had just read an article by George Harrison of the Beatles, and he was just raving about Yogananda. He was just going on and on how great he was.
Yeah.
So there was the connection there, and I knew I had to go down to California. So that was, by the way, Alo Devi was a godsend for me. She was an angel. I had no idea who she was until many, many, many years later. She was Sri Chinmoy's top disciple.
That's awesome.
I had no idea whose presence I was in.
I was going to ask, do you think that she was an angel? And it turns out that's what you said that. So you took the words right out of my mouth, because I've met people like that in my life. Not that I found out later that they were an angel, but it occurred to me later. I was like, there was something about that person where I was like, that person was, I feel like that person was an angel that was sent just specifically for me to, and it's happened about 3 or 4 times in my life. And it's just like, it's like, yeah, it's like you're in the presence of some greatness that you can't even, words don't even explain, you just know, right? And it could be just simply like passing somebody on the street. Like even today, there was a gentleman, I was walking down the street and he had like an accent. I didn't recognize it, but he was bald and very tanned. And I don't know how old he was. He looked, quite a bit older than myself. I probably at least 20 years. So I put him at, mid 60s. But I was walking down the street and he was walking down the street, and I don't know, I had a lot going on the past week, and he just gave me knuckles and he said, "God bless you, brother. God bless you." He said it twice, and I was like, "Same to you. Thank you so much." And that was like, that was one of those moments. I was like, that guy was just an angel,
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. And so, so now, around what age was this at? You had graduated or left university, and
I was about 21 at the time.
okay, so and so you went down to California, and that was a major shift for you.
Oh, absolutely. Because as soon as and we're talking a lot about Yogananda, but I don't mind because he's a divine soul. But I got to California, and it was a big. I could spend the whole hour just talking about this trip, about getting to California, but I'll try to make it short. I met somebody at the border, and he said he would drive me down to California, and apparently his sister lived a mile away from one of Yogananda centers. And so I was talking to him about it, and I had bought the autobiography, his book, in Seattle, and I was reading it as we were going down the coast. We got to her sisters, and I stayed there a couple of days, and I said, "Well, do you know about Yogananda?" And she said, "Well, yeah, he's got a center about a mile from our place, down to the end of Sunset Boulevard, right at the ocean." And so I said, "Well, do you want to go there?" And they weren't interested. So I got myself a bicycle, so I can get around, because I knew I couldn't stay there for quite a while. So I just got a bicycle. Anyhow, I bicycled to this place called Lake Shrine, and I walked the property, and I was expecting to feel all this energy from Yogananda, because I just read his book, and and I was on his property. I felt nothing, absolutely zero. And then all of a sudden it came. Jesus just blew me away. It was just, Jesus' presence was so strong. It was unbelievable. It lasted for about 3 months, and it was just overpowering. And I just knew. I went into, there was a Sunday service. I was listening to the minister. I couldn't even understand a word he was saying. It didn't even matter. I knew I was home. I had found my way. So.
That's amazing. I was actually just listening to something the other day, and the gentleman was saying that when it comes to vibration, we are the human side of ourselves. We're conditioned to only think we understand, one language or a couple languages, for people who speak multiple or understand multiple languages. But when it comes to vibration, you don't need to understand you don't need to, mentally understand what's being said to have that same sympathetic vibration to know what's being said is, whether or not it's in sync or in line with something that speaks to your soul on a level that, maybe the higher version of yourself, or the higher you, or your oversoul, understands what's being said. And you don't quite, you couldn't repeat it verbatim for what somebody said, but he said, it's like you instinctively know, like, I like what this person's saying, right?
Pure intuition, soul quality. I mean, it's just something we already have. And I like what you said just there, because I've used this a lot. One time I was wondering, when meditation, what am I doing here in meditation? Just exactly what I'm doing. And we talking about vibration or energy. Well, here I am vibrating at a certain frequency. I mean, I'm working to God realization, to those higher states of consciousness, but I'm not quite there yet. So I'm vibrating a certain frequency. But love or bliss, I mean, they're such refined, delicate vibrations. They're the first vibration coming out of spirit, the comforter, the Holy Ghost, the Om, and and the love aspect is a part of that, as is the bliss. So I was wondering, what am I doing in my meditation? And all of a sudden it hit me. Here's this fine vibration, this subtle vibration, and here I am. And as I meditate, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to, and I love the word you use, I'm not trying to attract it. I already have it. It's already in my consciousness. We're made in that image. I'm trying to synchronize with it. I'm trying to pulse with it, to, be in tune with it. And then once you're on that synchronicity, when you're vibrating in harmony with it, then you're one with it, and that's what, people talk about the law of attraction. Well, we got everything we need already inside, all that love, that peace, that joy, there, everything that we're craving is already inside. Everybody's looking for it outside, outside themselves, thinking this or that thing will do it. But in reality, it won't, because we're living in a world of duality. It's inside, and it's going within. And I love the word you use, synchronizing with it, pulsing with it. I love what Yogananda said, floating on a breeze of bliss. When you start synchronizing with those subtle vibration, then you feel that you're floating on it. You're just one with it, and then you just merge with it and become that expanded consciousness through it.
Exactly. And so that's, you hit the nail on the head. And I read somewhere a couple of weeks ago, and it really made sense to me, because people talk about synchronicity and seeing signs and things like that, and they don't all have to be. Sometimes there's signs that are personal to you. Maybe it's hearing a song that means something to you at some strange moment that just seems too good to be true, or whatever. But for this person said is that you only see the signs when you're on the right path. So when you're on that sympathetic vibration. So it's when you really feel, when you're in that state of pure bliss or heaven on earth. And that's what I've been saying lately is, I've cleaned up my diet and I've been cutting meat out the past year, and a lot of other things. I quit smoking, I quit drinking, and just all these things that I just felt so called to do, that I wasn't, I knew I would get there, but I just didn't know my reasoning behind it would be such a kind of a spiritual thing. But as you get to that point where you're on the right track, you start seeing these synchronicities, and it only happens when you feel like there's heaven on earth. And so when I go out in the morning and I take deep breaths, I say that to myself more often than not. Especially, I know that you do sun gazing, so you probably up early with the sun, right? But getting up in the morning and saying, wow, this is heaven on earth, when you say that to yourself, that's what you're not coloring it with human discord and distorted thinking and, this could be better. No, just, this is perfect. Exactly. Everything's working out the way it's supposed to. Like, what's going on over there, even though to some, or to, it might say, the human self wants to say, oh, this is good or this is bad, but it's going on outside of you. It's like you said, it's an illusion. So really, it's what's here is most important, right? And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's what we're all craving, or yearning for, all seeking. And it's the treasure that's right within us. It's the utopia that all the myths and stories and movies talk about, some external thing, or, and the mind is very tricky. The mind will say, if I just had this, if I just had that, if I was just in this relationship, if I just had that amount of money, if I just had this perfect health, this or that, I would be in utopia. I've come a long way along the spiritual path, and I can tell you it is just not true. This world can give you pleasure, but on the opposite side of the coin is pain. It can give you health, but the opposite side of the coin is sickness. It's a world of duality. Yes, we can have happiness, but it's only a pleasure. It's not contentment. I find when I go deep into meditation, all of a sudden you come to that point, oh, I am content. And I am content. I am content. Yeah. Talking about synchronicity, I was just thinking, that was in my mind, I thought I would share this. Sort of the divine works in an interesting way, that higher state of consciousness or cosmic consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, spirit. I talk about our higher state of consciousness as the diamond consciousness, and I wrote the book, The Diamond Way. But what the divine does, if we're just living a worldly life and going through our karma and a worldly existence, the hands are off, because the consciousness is all there. There's no seeking. But once there's an interest, once there's a seeking, once there's a questioning, why, Lord, or why, how come, who am I? What am I doing here? What the divine will do, once there's a crack, then the divine will send books. And I've heard people that have walked into libraries and all of a sudden a book will fall off the shelf like that synchronicity, like this is the book you need, there will be books, that will come our way, or some, that will show us and open us up. If we're yearning to go even deeper, then the teachers to come, and we can have many, many, many teachers. And then finally, if you're really serious, then that one that is divinely sent for you, that sort of teacher, as Christ was for his disciples, comes. And then you take that to that sadhana. So there's a progression, along the way. And so those episodes come into our lives that help us open up.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love what you were saying there, because you talked earlier about seeking, and I always say it's a whether or not we say it's intentionally made that way, or it's just by kind of that's just default. There is, almost seems to be built into being human, especially in Western society, destination addiction. We have birthdays, we have things to look forward to, events coming. Okay, you're going to get your license when you're 16, and that's all fine. But you talked about earlier too about getting to university, not feeling, not sure what you want to do. I shared the same thing too. It's like nowadays kids are going to university younger and younger. It's like they're trying to convince them at 16, 17 years old they need to know and should be equipped to know what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. And that's just not I don't think it's realistic to assume or put that responsibility on children. I think our adolescent years run much up into our 30s before, because I know just from my own personal experience, I'm 39 now, and only in the past couple of years have I really felt that, hey, I'm getting over some of the childhood things. And a lot of that, like you said, is seeking, because we want the outside world to validate something that we feel inside, right? So we're looking for the teachers, we're looking for the experience, we're looking for the high, we're looking for the sports car. And then we, after all this searching and attaining those things, then we realize, like you said, it's like, but it's emptiness, they're, and yeah. And so they don't provide that feeling, that nirvana, or that feeling of being home. And there's nothing that can ever do that I found so far, except for going within and realizing. I said that out loud today as I was doing my meditation, my deep breathing, and I've been doing a lot of work on my spine. And I said, it was just, here's another synchronicity. I was like, I finally have a home, and it's the kingdom within. And I said that out loud. And as I said it, something in my back cracked, and I was like, and my timer for it just went off, and it was 11:11 a.m. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. I had to write it down.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but things like that. So maybe touch back on that and in your journey about, was there a moment where you said, not that your life's journey and your understanding and your learning and the experiential aspects of being human isn't going to continue in the adventure and that, but was there a point where you said, I don't have to stop looking for this knowledge so much anymore in the books and the teachers that, not that but like you feel fulfilled that the answers are going to truly come within, that you don't need to go without to find them. Did you ever have a moment?
Well, as soon as I became a monk in Yogananda's ashram, realizing that the teacher, the guru or teacher, are only way showers. They show the way. They can't do the work, the inner work. I remember something Yogananda said to the disciples before he went to the Biltmore Hotel and went into his Mahasamadhi when the ambassador to India was there. He said, nobody can give you devotion for God. You got to cultivate it yourself. The great teachers can take you to the water, but they can't make you drink. We got to do it ourselves. We got to do the effort ourselves. And I think the singular most important thing that happened for me when I went into the ashram is because it opened up memories of past lives when I was a monk before. And it wasn't a good incarnation. It was in the Catholic order, and it was during really heavy times, Inquisition times, and I was a priest at the time, and it just opened up all these floods of memories. So once again, but that my saving grace was, I realized, and I read Saint Teresa of Avila's book, who was a great Christian mystic, as well as Yogananda, saying the same thing. They said, we are a diamond. we have that diamond consciousness already. That's the way we've been created. And I latched onto that. Okay, I'm a diamond, you know. So I held on to that concept, you know, and really developed it. And that was the singular most important when I realized, yes, everything I'm seeking, that treasure is inside.
Yeah, it's like that saying, like, all the answers are within us. We just need to be quiet enough to hear them, right?
Yeah, I love this thing that I experienced later on. It's from Hindu philosophy. It's called Shraddha, the heart's natural love. We have a yearning in our heart, and I'm talking about the heart chakra in the spine. It's a yearning. It's a yearning for our divine consciousness. It's a yearning to experience that diamond essence or the source, right? It's a yearning for that, which is trying to pull us in. We get it mixed up. We think that yearning is for out there. So we think, as I said before, you know, if I just had this or that, you know, so it's a yearning. And we go through incarnations thinking it's out there. I remember Buddha said the only reason we're back here is because of unfulfilled desire. There's things that we think that this planet Earth is going to offer us that's going to give us that ultimate happiness. So we keep coming back to, we realize ain't gonna happen. You know, it's in me. It's right. The treasury is here. You know, then you come to meditation, where that's the singular most direct point, where it's no longer, you're not so much focused on there, but you're more focused on here. And once you feel that, then you're focused on there because you want to give the treasure. The soul wants to give. But there's Shraddha, this heart's natural love. It's a yearning, and it's a yearning for that divine state of consciousness. And it's pulling us in. We get it misdirected, but eventually, at some point, and I'll tell you, one of the major pivotal points, but most people don't get it, midlife crisis. At a midlife crisis, the person starts to question, if I continue down this path that I'm going, I am not going to be happy. This is not fulfilling me. So what do? They do all kinds of crazy, bizarre things. They think, oh, if I just was in a different relationship, so they get divorced and get another person, or they get a sports car. They do all kinds of craziness, thinking that if they heighten their senses or heighten their experiences, they'll find what they're missing. They won't. It just takes them further off the track. You know, it's a wake-up call to go within. You know?
Yeah, and you know what? There's like, growing up from a small town in Northern Ontario, like you hear "go within" and it just sounds so out there. Like, what does that even mean, go within? And it took me such a long time to understand that, because even the first time I tried meditation, I think I was about 6 years old in Taekwondo class, sitting there, and I was like there to learn self-defense because I was being bullied, not sit still. It was like, "Sensei, I thought we were here to learn punches and kicks, you know, not sit still." So I didn't understand that concept of meditation at a young age. And then when I was about 16, I did jujitsu again. And by that time, I was kind of, I was 16. I had a lot of teenage angst going on, and questions about the world that I wasn't finding answers for. And so I actually kind of started to get the idea of sitting still, but it didn't hit to me till about, I guess probably 11 years ago now, when I guess it was a quarter life crisis, but yeah, in my 20s. But I had this really well-paying job, and I quit that and broke up with my girlfriend, and I just remember laying on my, it was my first apartment by myself, laying on my floor, just crying, listening to music, not like, just saying, "God, like, what is going on in life? Like, what?" And something like spoke to me, and it's like, well, you have the internet, so start researching the secret to life and whatever, and start trying meditation. And then I realized that, because I'd been DJing and, working, producing music, I was like, oh, this is some sort of meditative aspect of doing something, of kind of silencing everything outside myself. So I used that. So I would listen to music, and then I started getting rid of the music, and then I started using just a candle. But then, and that took me years, and I would dabble here and dabble there. And then it wasn't until about a year and a half ago where I really started understanding the value of and sitting still and complete release, and saying, I don't need to think about anything. I don't, like, because I heard somebody say, if you really want to have an effective meditation, is think to yourself, okay, you have all these thoughts racing through your head, and then just kind of let them go and say, what's my next thought going to be? And for some reason that worked for me. It was like, oh, I don't need to have a next thought unless I consciously choose it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that was powerful. So how would you explain to somebody who's just getting into meditation, what it's really about from your journey through it and what they're looking to achieve? Because it's really hard to say to somebody, it doesn't, I didn't get it for years and years. Oh, you just want to sit still and still the mind, especially in the Western world where it's like, it's this destination addiction culture where it's, oh, I got to achieve this, I got to do that, we got to be on time, we got to go. I don't have an hour, I don't have time to just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, I teach meditation, so I've been teaching it for quite some time. I've been practicing for more than 50 years now, so it's something that's totally ingrained in my consciousness. I would say, because I worked in a stress management clinic in downtown Toronto for many years, and most people came for stress reasons. They just, as you say, busy, restless, minds all reacting, just caught up in 20th century living and having no peace at all. It's just constantly out there and just constantly restless. So the first thing, of course, the first stage when people come is they want to get that calm or that peace or that centeredness, So that's sort of the first step. And then you realize, well, the biggest obstacle in meditation is the looping mind, the restless mind, the monkey mind. You got to get that mind still, because that lake of divine consciousness is there, but you got to get that mind still to perceive it. If you can get it still enough, then it's right there. It's not something you have to get or acquire. It's just right there, but it's getting still enough to perceive it. So in the first stages is, yes, I just want to be calm. But if you go deeper in meditation, there comes the point where I want to know who I truly am. I want to open up my heart. I want to have this deeper sense of awareness. I want to connect with source. You begin to recognize there's a pulling, there's this energy. And you mentioned something in the beginning, like, I remember George Harrison saying the way out is in. Into what? Into where?
Yeah.
Into my what? Liver?
Where do I go inside? There's nowhere to go. Like
there is.
Yeah.
There is the chakra centers.
Yeah.
The spiritual centers. And it's getting that energy. Once we can get still enough, and this is why Yogananda teaches pranayama, or life force control, because he says wherever your energy is, that's where your consciousness is. For most people, it is totally out there. Mm-hmm. You've got to get a hold of that energy and bring it in. That's why he teaches like Kriya Yoga, a meditation technique, a pranayama, life force control technique, to get that energy in, away from the senses, pull that cosmic energy in from the medulla, and then center it in the heart, and especially in the spiritual eye, because this is where we're trying to go. And then when we can start opening up, then we're opening up to love, to peace, to joy, all those divine, changeless qualities that were in us, that are within us. The world teaches outwardly, the world is ever changeable. Most people get mindfulness meditation wrong because they don't understand why Buddha actually taught it. Why Buddha taught mindfulness meditation, of course, what the West has latched onto, and it's wonderful and necessary. And I teach it, and I did it at the stress management clinic. Got to get out of the past and the regrets of the past, or anticipating the fear of the future. We've got to get into the present moment. But why did Buddha want to bring us to the present moment? Yeah, just to enjoy the senses and to enjoy just to be focused in the present moment, so we could be more centered in our work and more available in our relationships and more there. And that's extremely, extremely important. But beyond that, what Buddha wanted us to do was to see that everything is ever changing. Nothing is constant. It's a changeable universe, up, down, pleasure, pain, joy, sorrow, life, death. It's a rule of opposites. And once we can get to that place of stillness or that calmness, then we get to that changeless part of ourselves that we realize that. And then once we're centered in that changeless part of ourselves, then we can move through a world of change because we're anchored in that changeless part of ourselves. We're rooted and we're not affected. We're not buffeted all over the place. We're not reacting. So we want to get deeper into that. But to say we feel peace within, that's just one aspect. If our soul is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, as it is, one with that infinite source, what happens in meditation is you start to feel peace of the heart. And all of a sudden, if you go deep enough, you begin to feel that your whole body is peace. Every cell is peace. Now, peace is in every atom of creation. Peace is in everything. So is love. So is bliss. It's omnipresent throughout creation. So you begin to feel your oneness with peace. You begin to feel expansion of consciousness. You feel, I feel I'm one with all this room, everything in this room. I feel that peace within everything. Then you realize you're one with all of Toronto, all of North America, and you feel your consciousness expanding. You say, my gosh, I'm not limited to this body. I'm not limited to anything. And you feel your consciousness. And what Christ consciousness is to feel that oneness with peace, or that intelligence that's within the light. You feel that you're one with it in all of creation. You feel that you are, the word again, synchronizing with the universe. You're one with it. Through that quality, you've expanded yourself, you know. Then we come back in our meditation and we can't hold on to it. The ultimate state of a true master, a Jesus, a Yogananda, a Buddha, a Krishna, is they have that consciousness all the time. They don't lose it. They're able to maintain it. In the beginning of our meditations, we begin to feel these wonderful qualities. Then we come back and we lose it. Part of the trick of meditation is not only going in meditation and experience it, but hold on to it. Make it the cornerstone of your life. Just don't throw it away. So you become more rooted in it. You're more of a peaceful being, you know. And then finally, when you realize that oneness with infinite source, you're always there. No need to meditate, you know. So,
Yeah. Like you said, hold on to it. And I always say that to people. It's like you go from meditation to meditative. Like you just live in that state, and it's beautiful. And I've had the pleasure the past year to really look into it. And like you said, it's difficult to maintain, and oftentimes I get triggered into things. And it's a lot about going through. For myself personally, going through, and not everybody has to do that type of journey. Everybody's got their own path, but I had to let go of a lot of childhood traumas and issues and things that, you know, people talk, I've been talking with my family about generational trauma and whether or not things are passed down, but we learn so much through our programming from our family and the society that we're brought up in, that a lot of people have. I had so much letting go to do. And you touched on it earlier. You were saying about, you know, always the next thing, and really, you know, always seeking, and that's a huge thing. And everybody thinks, oh, it's, well, if I get this job, then I'll be happy. If I get, you know, if I make $100,000 a year, then I'll be happy. For me, I used to think those things too, and then you achieve them, and you don't find happiness, and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't it. So what's it? and for me, I had the most profound revelations, like in tears of ecstatic joy over like thinking something, you know, something that I thought was my fault my whole life. And, oh, you know, I did this as a child and it caused this person to be this. And then to realize that, oh, that was just a story that I was telling myself, and I can let go of that.
absolutely.
It's not who I am.
It's true. We're the diamond self that's totally karmic free, totally, you know, totally free and flawless. In fact, the soul doesn't make a mistake. We're put down here and up and down, you know, the thing of duality of good and evil and all that kind of stuff. So we feel that we're blundering along, but that part of our higher states of consciousness is pure, it's flawless. It always has been. And one thing that really hit me, and this was a milestone for me too, to realize I am a piece of God. God did not create me out of nothing. God create, all there is infinite consciousness. When God created, all there was a source, right? So what does the source got to create out of? Source. So, you know, it creates you and me and everybody else, and everything else is a piece of the divine in different states of vibration, mind you, but it's all piece of infinite consciousness. When that hit me and I realized, and it's why Jesus could say, and Psalms could say, ye are gods. I mean, We are, each and every one of us. We're divine beings, we're gods. And in plain language. And when I realized that, that was a huge, huge shift. And I want to make another comment too. There's something you said that I learned, because I did therapy work and I was carrying this trauma, and I was talking about past life trauma. And I can tell you, working out this thing was pretty heavy. And I could tell you that we carry some scars. These tendencies are lodged in the spine, and talk about cellular memory. The body remembers. But when you start meditating, when you start refining your consciousness, like I did therapy work, and sort of like the jackhammer effect of trying to get this stuff off, and I talk about the mud on the diamond, we're trying to get the mud off the diamond. That's all we're trying to do. The diamond is pure always. Our only job is to get that mud off, but if you go in meditation and you're in those refined vibrations, what happens if there's mud on the diamond and you heat up the diamond?
It melts off.
That's exactly what happens to our consciousness. If you get to those refined states of consciousness, those traumas, those negative tendencies, they just start dropping off.
Yeah. Because
they can't, and those rarefied airs of that divine being or consciousness, they just, drop away.
That's
spontaneously.
Yeah, that's amazing. And to some people probably wouldn't believe it, but I can tell you from experience that I had things that I held on to probably, 20 years longer than I should have. And then one day, it's like these things that you identify with the story. And it's like, well, no, you can't, because I was a victim of this, or I went through this. You don't know what it's like to be me. But then you realize you're just telling yourself that story. And there's things that at certain points in my life where I identified with this thing. And it's like, no, it's gone now. And you'll realize that, some of the things that you thought you'd never get over, one day they won't even touch you anymore. Like you'll think about it, instead of crying about it like you might have in the past when you were younger, you'll almost smile and laugh and say, thank you for the experience and the growth, and that was a profound thing to have happen to myself, is like, wow, there's certain things that I thought I'd never get over. And it's some of them you don't even have to get over. They just, like you said, they won't even stick to you anymore.
Right. The other thing I really learned on that topic too, that really helped me in my meditation, is that thoughts are energy. Now, this is the hard thing, and I find in my meditation class, it's a hard thing for people to grasp. But once you can get it, it's pretty freeing. We don't create thoughts. We use thoughts. Thoughts are energy. They're things. They're energy. But we don't create energy. If I say to someone, I want you to create peace, the thought of peace, we can't do that, because you'd have to know its vibrating frequency. You'd have to know everything about it, right? We don't create thoughts. They're energy, right? We don't create energy. We use energy. So there is this, if you want to think of this, the Creator has created the sea of infinite possibilities, and we can pick and choose, right? But we don't create the thoughts. We entertain the thoughts. Nice. So it could be with the environment we're in. We attract certain thoughts to us. I mean, it could be our belief system or whatever. But if this streaming thoughts are coming in, thought after thought after thought, you're not sitting there thinking, I'm creating this thought, I'm creating that thought. No, you're just picking up thoughts. And we're picking up thoughts of the ether, especially in this time of what we're going through. There's a lot of fear thoughts. So these fear thoughts are streaming through our consciousness, but we don't create them. So if we're latching a thought onto a particular trauma or something, it's a thought form. And this really helped me understanding thought. From thought comes a feeling. From a feeling comes an action, and there's a habit and character. It's all looping, but it's all coming from a thought originally, right? If we understand we're not the thought, we can let it go. Mm-hmm. We can just let it pass by, And I remember doing a meditation class, and one student, and this doctor who was taking the meditation class, this student said something, and the doctor said to me later, she just freed me. She just freed my consciousness. You know what she said? She said, about thought, she says, that thought is not for me. That thought is not for me. And that doctor said that was so liberating for me. I don't have to accept these thoughts. I didn't create them. I use them. I don't.
That's very powerful. And I think so many people, the younger you can come to the realization of that, the better, because a lot of times I was reading somewhere and it made me reflect on my life too. It said a lot of the thoughts we have, like you said, they're not even our thoughts, but they can get in. And if you entertain that thought, it can really, it can throw you off track for years, because you could have something, you know, if you entertain a thought that you perceive as bad, and you say, oh my God, am I a bad person because I have that thought? So is there some deep-seated issue in me, or am I that type of person? And you start going off on this self-perpetuated vortex of negativity based around this one thought that wasn't even yours. It's just that, you know, it went by, you grabbed it, you entertained it too long, and then it becomes almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I really like that idea that you get to pick and choose, and we don't have to entertain those thoughts. And so a lot of times the things that you have, the thoughts might just be out of curiosity, because we have to kind of say, well, you know, when we're learning and growing up and our brain's developing what we believe in, or, you know, what we're looking for, we have to say, well, do we believe that to be good or bad? So you have to think about certain things. And some people, you know, you can let your thoughts destroy you, because like you said, they are energies and they are things. And so that's what happens with a lot of mental illness. I think there's so much of it that can be avoided, where people just need to let go of that thought, saying that's not who you are. You don't have to identify with that thought or that story you've created around that thought.
I remember Buddha said something, I'm not going to paraphrase it, but I'm not going to get quite exact, but it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts are your salvation or your destruction. You know,
yeah. It's so true.
You know, if you latch onto a positive thought and go with it and manifest it, that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. That's what we need to do. The soul wants to act in creation, wants to use this body, wants to get the ego in harmony with the soul and manifest greatness, you know, and then we latch onto a positive thought and go for it. But as you mentioned, we can create a life of total misery, you know.
Yeah, and that's the trouble and the fine line, because someone like myself, who's very creative and you know, always loved creative writing, and we can use our creativity, we can almost use it against ourselves, because we start creating story, and it's like, wow, this is so much of it self-created, and so many people, we live inside our heads at points in our lives, and we, you know, well, this person said this to me, so I wonder if it's like this, and we create this crazy story all based around this one thought, right? And it can lead you right down the wrong path. And so to take that back and to take control over those things, and I really like, I've been reading the Saint Germain I Am discourses recently, and a lot of the stuff in there really resonates with me. And they talk about like the power of your thoughts, and how you can direct, you can switch your consciousness from thinking from New York to Chicago, or looking at the plant in the room to the piano. And just the same way you do that, you know, by using your conscious, you know, visual attention, you can do it with your mind as well, saying, you know, no, I'm not going to entertain those thoughts. And sometimes it's just a quick snap of the fingers, right?
Yeah, the problem with most people, though, as you said, Rob, most people are doing, their energy is always out there, you know, the thoughts are just coming one after the other. They don't even have time to discriminate. There's no gap between the thoughts. So they're reacting. If I could say in the question you asked me before, the beginning, for a beginner, if you're having that kind of problem, meditation gives you that opportunity to start to still the mind. So there is some kind of gap. So you can start to discriminate and say, I'm not going to go there, you know, instead of just reacting right off the cuff. Mm-hmm. You know, at least you have some room, some wiggle room to say yes or no. You know? Yeah,
that's very powerful. Well, actually, and on that note, I was going to say, I think we're coming up to the hour time limit, and we could keep going. There's so many things I wanted to keep talking to you about. I wanted to get into your books, but we'll do that on the next episode. So thank you so much, Alexander, for coming on. And I just want anybody out there that might be watching this, I'm going to put your links in the description below. So if they want to reach out, especially for meditation or any of the stuff that you know, you teach, or any of your books, we'll put some links towards those underneath. I wanted to wrap up with maybe one more question about you know, what happened in the past 2 years with the pandemic, and how you saw it affect yourself, and maybe from a bird's eye view, how you saw it affect the world, and how you think, you know, how did it affect you your family and your friends, but also what do you, from kind of a higher level perspective, what do you think that was all about? Because I think that at first I was angry that it was happening. And then at the end of it all, I was like, now I'm grateful that all that happened. So could you kind of give me your take on it?
Well, this planet, I mean, it goes through world cycles, as I talked about, up and down, pleasure, pain. This planet doesn't escape either. It goes to ascending arc till we get to the golden age, descending arc. We get down to the darkest materialistic Kali Yuga. It's talked about. Where we are right now, thank God, this planet is evolving. We've come out of the dark age, and we've come out. The Renaissance was sort of the shift where we started coming to Para Yuga. It's the age of energy. And this is why all the sciences have to do with energy, like Reiki, Shiatsu, Yogananda teaching pranayama. It's why they're becoming, at their time now, color therapy, which I do because it has to do with energy. We're understanding energy, prana. So this planet is evolving. But whenever there's a shift from one age to the other, from Kali to the Para, there's this friction. This material consciousness does not want to die. It's holding on like a dog. And it's putting everything on a holding pattern. The planet wants to expand into the light. So there's this friction. The dark is getting darker, the light is getting lighter. And there's greed, and it's blowing up, and we can get into more discussion of how this greed is manifesting itself in big ways. But this greed is pulling the planet back, and we're trying, and it's causing, it's causing the whole pandemic because we create whatever we put out in the ether, if there's this tension, it's going to create all kinds of disruption in the ether and cause this whole thing. And we can get into if it's planned or not planned and all that kind of stuff. But, another time. But I just want to take it on the higher level. This planet is evolving and it won. And I want to share this experience if we have time. Do we still have time?
Yeah, we do. There is no time limit, but like I said, we could probably talk for hours. So I figured we'd chop it up into, at least 3 segments, but we could chat for another 10, 15 minutes. It's up to us, right? Really.
Well, I just want to share this one thing that I found very helpful.
Okay.
And it's when I was in Yogananda's order, and there was this woman who was running the organization. I bow at her feet, very saintly, Sri Dayamata. She was in the Himalayan mountains. She was going to Babaji's cave, which is a great master in India, deathless master. And she was taking a trip there, and she had a superconscious vision. And in the superconscious vision, before she got to the cave, they were staying at some place. She cried out in the night, and the other nuns came to console her and ask her if everything was all right. She said, everything's fine. And she said, I'll talk about it in the morning. But what happened in the dream was she saw this black, dark, dense cloud of karma enveloping herself and the world. Because she cried out to God, she realized intuitively what was going to happen. She was going to have a serious illness. And Yogananda said later that was her time to go. But she had this serious illness. She was rushed to the hospital, and they were operating on the wrong thing. And anyhow, she finally pulled through it. She did make it because she had this experience. In the experience, she saw the astral realm. And the voice said to her, God said to her, are you ready for death? She says, of course I am. This is like absolutely beautiful. One thing about meditation we never talked on is we're trying to reconnect with that beautiful astral realm as well. We got to open up the chakras to experience it. But she saw it and she said, why wouldn't I? I'm ready for death. Why would I not leave this false, like broken glass for this infinite jewel of the divine consciousness? And then the Divine Mother said, but would you stay for me? She said, I would do anything for you. And she said, it was sleep now. And she went back. Anyhow, she was revived of that. But she said, karmically, what's happening for the world right now is this dark cloud of evil is almost strangling the earth. And what we have to do is put our consciousness back on God. That is what it is. She said, that's what I did. We are divorced from that divine consciousness. You and I are seeking it. We know it's inside. Most people aren't. So they're still caught up in that Kali Yuga, that dark materialistic age, that greed, that selfishness. It's still perpetuating our planet. Until we can break free of that and put our consciousness on a higher plane of consciousness. But she said, once we do, she saw the white light come. It was just like a tiny little piece of light. The divine consciousness came, and then it just broke it up. So we're going to come out of this, but we collectively have to do the work. We have to elevate ourselves into that divine state of consciousness before this greed and selfishness can be dissipated.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. And I totally agree. And, you know, I always like the saying, like a rising tide lifts all ships. That's the same with consciousness. So the work that we do on ourselves, even though it might seem little, it's helping the greater humanity. Because what, you know, like David Hawkins says, what's good for you is good for me in this interconnected universe. So when we are seeking God, when we understand that we're all part of each other and all part of that, you know, I say, you touched on it before, I wrote this down years ago, and and it kind of just came to me. It was like we are all physical manifestations of that same consciousness. And so when you see, you know, the face of God in strangers, you know, we're all brothers and sisters at kind of a, you know, just like different grades of school, different levels, different ages, and not everybody that's, you know, older physically is older spiritually. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that there's a lot of adult people, people that grow into old age that are still in their adolescent spiritual development, that haven't really gone past that point in their lives, right? And I think that I think this is acting as a catalyst for a lot of people, because I've noticed a lot of people waking up and
Absolutely.
even just saying, you know, there was a woman that since I moved back here, and I had a lot of conversations in the elevator going up and down at the condo, but I started talking to her about, you know, and I try not to do it from a condescending standpoint, but just saying, you know, oh yeah, like I don't, she was asking me about the news, and I said, no, yeah, I don't watch the news. I'm like, it's going to drive you crazy. And she's like, well, where were you a year ago? And she's like, I'm realizing that now, you know. But, and so it's really interesting. And you know, maybe we should save it for next time, but I wanted to ask you earlier, because you talked about, you know, the dark cloud enveloping the world and a lot of the darkness that we're in. Do you think that was intentional? Do you think that there is, you know, a sinister force that's suppressing humans and our God, you know, our God capabilities and the futures that we can, you know, almost the butterflies that we can turn into? Or is it something that we just kind of collectively forgot?
Oh, well, I think there is a force that's trying to do this. I mean, there's people, Alexander the Great, I mean, Hitler. I mean, there's people that want world dominance. And one of the things that a lot of people want, they think, yes, we do want power because the soul is all powerful. But most people think power means dominance over other people, you know, and most people are into power. They want that power card, you know, and yeah, and they want, I think the situation is like there's an energy that's going around where they want to be the queen bee and everybody else is the drones, right? Under their control. So yeah, there is an evil force that is also at the same time collective consciousness, as Carl Jung talked about it. You know, we create our destiny through our collective consciousness. It's not only individual karma, but there's world karma. So we create that reality through the total mindset of everybody collectively, you know. So I hope
Yeah.
that answers the question. Maybe I'm being a bit vague, but
No, totally. You know, I was just, I thought it was an interesting question because, you know, you know, we have this conversation and not everybody believes that, you know, some people believe, oh, that's crazy talk. There's, you know, but I just like to get people's opinions on it, because I think that there is, you know, I think for a large portion, you know, you talked about previous lives and whether we come in veiled purposefully or part of a soul agreement, saying that, you know, it's part of our awakening process. It's almost like a game that you play and it's like an aha remembering. So, you know, we're all on different soul paths and different points of in that journey. So, you know, I read somewhere a couple of weeks ago that, you know, as much as everybody wants everybody else to wake up, that there's, in this incarnation, there's a huge amount of the population that's not going to wake up. It doesn't matter what, it's just not in their, it's not in their experience in this lifetime. So I don't know what happens for them, but there's a huge, like, I had this maybe pie in the sky, you know, positive thinking that, oh yeah, these things are going to lead up to the entire population, this great awakening, that might be far-fetched. It might be a great awakening for majority of it, but maybe are certain people that aren't meant to wake up.
Yeah, we're just in the beginning stages of the Para Yuga. This planet still has a long ways to go to get to the golden age, to shift that state of consciousness that drastically. But for me personally, some people, a lot of people, yourself included, I know, have come down for this time because it is a golden incarnation. It's a golden time when this friction, the good and evil, I mean, it's really strong. It's a golden, and it's why I want to get back into my work, and more than I've ever wanted to before, because it's a pivotal point where we can bring that spiritual consciousness to the planet. And if people accept it or not, just our vibration, if we're doing the work and out there, spreading the message, and I want to do it more and more. I'm rebuilding my website. I'm just revamping everything because I want to come out with a with a strong energy to help, to bring that positive energy or vibration to the planet, because it's crucial. We're teetering, but as I say, the planet is evolving. So eventually, those negative forces, they won't vibrate. They just drop off because they're not in harmony with a higher vibration. This planet is evolving too.
Yeah, I was listening to an interesting podcast by, I think it was a lady, and she was talking about the Earth as a sentient being, and that its consciousness has evolved too, and that there was a certain time where it drew in energies, almost like a dark magnet, where it was consuming, and then it got to a point where it said, this isn't sustainable, so it started to give back to the humans. And I thought that was just a really fascinating perspective about the Earth itself as a conscious sentient being that is living, and so, like you said, evolving. And hopefully we can all do that journey together.
And if you watch any great master, we talked about meditation and what we're trying to achieve. If you look at any great master like Buddha, I mean, he sat under the Bodhi tree and he achieved nirvana under the Bodhi tree. What did Buddha do? He had the option. He could have went off into cosmic consciousness and been in nirvana, the absolute void. He didn't. He came and served. He gave and gave and gave. And that's one of the things of meditation. Once you make the connection, the whole thing is, I think a master is a master because their cup is full. They don't need anything from anybody. They've got it all, and they know they do. Their whole thing is just giving, giving, giving. They don't care if they get anything back in return. It's just giving, 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 because that's the nature of divine consciousness. It just wants to give because the cup is full. There's no need to make it full from without.
Yeah.
They've gone to the fountain, they've gone to the source. They're totally full. So it's a giving. So that's one thing of meditation too, is once it's wanting to give and help uplift humanity, and that whole energy as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. I read a book. I don't know. I think he's actually a Canadian. I think, was he out of Montreal? Was Dr. maybe Maurice Burke, and he wrote a book called Cosmic Consciousness that I was reading. I don't think I finished it because sometimes I get sidetracked with other books, but it was going through about people who attained enlightenment and cosmic consciousness, and how that it can be a very tricky, slippery slope, and almost that at times it can feel like a blessing and a curse, because you have to come back down to reality where not the majority of the population isn't like that. They've never had that experience. So to reintegrate and figure out how you're going to spread the light, knowing after you've had that blast of cosmic consciousness, can be quite difficult. And he talked about different people who'd attained that, and they actually kind of went through a depression again until that enlightenment came back to them, and they had another aha moment, because it's easy to slip back into it, right? Into almost going back to sleep.
Yeah. But if the master's finally done the work, and I'm still working on it, but if they are a Christ and they're totally one with that infinite consciousness, they don't lose it. They have that, even though they come down and go through the tests and trials of as being examples, they still know in the background of their consciousness that they are free.
Yeah.
They are free souls.
Yeah. This has been an amazing talk, Alexander. Thank you so much. I can't wait to do it again. So maybe we could set something. What's that, sorry?
I said tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'm just joking.
Well, I'm moving next week, so I think the next week it might be, but definitely in the upcoming weeks when we can align our schedule again, I'd love to do another episode with you. And we have so many topics we could talk about. And like you said, even I love the way you tell stories. And you said, you could probably tell a whole hour just on your journry down to California or whatever it was you're talking about.
I could. What happened at the border and everything. Well,
yeah. So well, thank you so much once again. I'm going to put your links, so anybody out there watching that wants to get in touch with Alexander, read one of his books, or hire him and get in touch with him for his services, for whether it be meditation or whatever, please just click the links below. I really appreciate it, Alexander. Any last parting words of wisdom?
No, thank you, Rob, for allowing me to really speak from my heart and express my soul consciousness here. I just want to inspire everyone to find that treasure, that's right within. Most people are just groping, and life is leaving them flat. I want them to find that treasure, and if I can be in any way to be a spark, or just one word that helps people move in that direction. And this has been a golden opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And thank you for providing that spark to me, because, since the first day we met, well, I guess technically maybe our souls met 30 years ago listening to Callie's Dream in some strange way. So, but, since since I've met you, it's been wonderful. Every time we get to, hang out in person or on one of our calls, I always learn so much. And I just love to hear your stories and the insights and wisdom and like you said, sharing your soul and consciousness with me as well. So I appreciate that very much. And I look forward to doing it again. So you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alexander. Take care.
And bye, everybody that's been listening. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.